okay, Nugget. Okay, so this week is the first week that I've been back in real training. I started doing a little bit of jiu-jitsu about 3 weeks after I gave birth. It wasn't hard training. It wasn't probably wasn't advisable either, but I gave birth at 42 weeks in one day, so I was extremely pregnant and I was extremely done with being pregnant. So by the time I started feeling better, I just wanted to move around a little bit. So I started training earlier than probably is advisable, but I just needed to do something for my sanity. So for weeks 3, 4, and even a little bit of week 5 last week, I kept my training very light, and I really was just focusing on moving and kind of reestablishing good movement patterns in my training and my body, because when you are pregnant and you give birth, your joints become very loose and they become very hypermobile, which is something that doesn't immediately go away after you give birth either. So I can still feel my ankles and my knees and even my shoulders and my wrists to a certain extent. They feel very loose, almost like they're grinding together at times. So now I'm starting back into the lifting side of things to reestablish the muscular support for my joints until all of the hormones kind of leave my system and I'm able to hold my joints together without muscles, essentially. So I found out that I was pregnant in, I think, early December last year. And it was a bit of a surprise. We hadn't intended to get pregnant so quickly. She was just ready, I guess. So I found out that I was pregnant, and I did a lot of research into what I could do while I was pregnant, what the recommendations were. And in the UK, it's very different than the United States. I think in the US, there's a culture of being very, very overcautious with pregnant women. And there is to an extent here as well. The problem is that it's very, very difficult to do any kind of real testing on pregnant women because of the ethics of scientific inquiry. So basically what I found is that whatever you were doing before you were pregnant, you can pretty much continue doing while you're pregnant, as long as you're not falling or, having heavy blows or anything like that could potentially injure you or the baby. So I kept training jiu-jitsu up until I was about 7 months pregnant. I taught my last seminar when I was, I think, 30 weeks pregnant. So obviously during that time there were things that I couldn't do anymore. Like watching me double leg somebody at 30 weeks pregnant must have been quite a sight to see. But I did it. The only person I was really training with at that point in time was my husband, because he was the only one I really trusted to not completely break me. And also I had a lot of pent up anger at him for not being able to train, so it was just a really good excuse to kneel on his face for extended periods of time. So anyway, I kept training jiu-jitsu a couple times a week. I wasn't training hard by any means, but I wanted to keep moving. I wanted to keep the body mechanics that my body knew, fluid as much as possible. It became almost impossible to do any kind of guard after probably about 20 weeks. Whenever I laid on my back, I was just kind of like a fish flopping around out of water. But regardless, I did my best. I did a lot of passing. I did a lot of knee sliding. Like I said, a lot of kneeling on my husband's face. So once I was out of the first trimester, I realized that, jiu-jitsu wasn't going to give me any kind of real cardiovascular or strength workout anymore, because obviously I can't do enough to really get my heart rate up or to get myself sweating, not to mention like build any kind of muscle. So I started working out, doing a lot of lifting with a gym that's actually a couple doors down from our gym. We did a lot of Sorry. Brief cuddle break. Yeah. Yeah. You awake? You awake? She's been fighting naps very hard. So, anyway, I started working out, doing a lot of lifting, and a lot of like, I would say it's CrossFit style training, in the sense that it was a lot of like HIIT training and mixed lifting cardio kind of training, uh, just to keep myself as strong as possible. When you give birth, there's a reason they call it labor. It's hard work. My labor was about 50 hours long, so it was serious business. And I don't think that if I hadn't been lifting, that I would have been able to keep going for as long as I managed to. So I kept doing that throughout my pregnancy. I stopped lifting about a week before I gave birth, mostly because I was afraid that I was going to do a really hard lifting session in the morning and then go into labor at night and not have the energy to finish the labor. That was my big concern. I think I could have lifted up until the day that I gave birth, if I hadn't been afraid that I was going to gas myself out in the gym. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Bouncy, 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 bouncy baby. Bouncy, 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 bouncy baby. Are we done? She's just a bit of a squawker. So, that is the basics of my lifting journey. I have really, really enjoyed, honestly, training at at Full Circle Fitness, mostly because Tom and I spend so much time teaching other students that it's really nice to just have somebody tell you what to do sometimes. So I've really been enjoying the classes and being around other people, and a lot of the women that I was lifting with were actually the inspiration for this, because so many of them would talk to me about how it was great that I was lifting for so long during my pregnancy, and I'm just a normal person. I'm just I'm lucky that I get to be fit for my job, but I don't have any kind of like special talents. I'm not unique in any way, and anybody can keep their relative fitness throughout their pregnancy if it's something that you decide to do, obviously barring any kind of major medical issues. But I had a very normal pregnancy, so no medical issues to speak of. So now we're about, like I said, about 6 weeks postpartum. I started lifting again at 5 weeks. My child is just intent on throwing herself off my lap. I started lifting again at 5 weeks, and I found that, going back to lifting was great, but I was so fatigued in my core. Jiu-jitsu fatigued me in my core, but nothing like lifting. And we only did a light session too, so it was enlightening, to say the least, when it comes to finding out how little core you really have after giving birth. But I'm hoping that by continuing lifting maybe once or twice a week until I can reestablish some strength, I'll be able to rebuild that core much faster. Just the amount of strength needed just to brace yourself to do a proper back squat is something that I took for granted, and I won't take it for granted anymore, that's for sure. But essentially, the lifting, I think, is going to be really, really important for my recovery and my long-term, like achieving my goals long-term, because unless I can rebuild my entire trunk at this point, there's no way I'll ever be able to compete at a high level again. So that's the goal for now. And hopefully this little girl keeps sleeping through my lifting sessions, because she slept like a champion during my lifting sessions last week, didn't you? Didn't you? Yeah. We got really lucky with our baby, because she's a champion sleeper. She's sleeping, 5, 6, 7 hours a night, and I think that is very much facilitating this project and recovery and everything. She's a little bit sick right now, so she's not the happiest camper in the world. But so I don't have any kind of long-term evidence that lifting is amazing for your recovery or anything, but I found that throughout my pregnancy it was great for my mental state, and now that I'm going back to training more rigorously, it's been very eye-opening as to just where my weak points are in my body right now. So we're gonna keep on lifting, and next week we'll talk a little bit more about going back to jiu-jitsu when I have a little bit more to talk about, because right now I'm not training with any kind of intensity that's worth discussing. But we'll keep you guys updated, and hopefully this little girl will go and take a nap. Yeah.